the Camp Carlton Band. Thank you so much for coming today. I hope everyone got a little songbook to share, because after the first year, everyone seemed to want to sing along. So we printed up books for you. So we'll have some great tunes. You'll get to hear these things as soldiers may have heard them during the Civil War. It's a pleasure now to introduce the leader for today's band, Mr. W. Todd Humphrey.
Good morning. I'd like to kind of take you back in time a little bit, a few 150, 60 years, and give you kind of an experience of what the battlefield soldier was going through, and then also show you the other side of the coin and talk about what maybe some of the officers would be doing during this time. Oh, let's start with the poor battlefield soldier. You have troops everywhere. Things come to a halt because of the weather, snow, cold, bitter cold. Basically, you are layered, so whatever you are issued as a uniform and maybe a blanket or two, that's it. It's cold out. Okay? Truces were going on during this time, and everybody speaks the same language. Everybody basically has the same culture. So they get together, and different bands and things would start playing for both sides. And men would get together on both sides, and they'd have card games. They would trade letters with each other and read each other their letters from home, and talk and trade tobacco and all kinds of things like this. So what we're going to do is play some of those tunes for you in the style and with some of the old arrangements that they would have heard back then. We're first going to start with Angels We Have Heard on High, classical piece, and please feel free to sing along with this.
Page 1 in your book.
How many verses do we want to do?
Depends how fast you can.
Up to you. You're the song leader.
How many verses do you guys want to sing?
Two. All right. Here we go. Very good. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. One, two, three. Take a moment and give you a little of the background of the instruments and the ensemble and what is going on. We would have been a detachment from the main band, although back in the day, some bands were as small as what we are, or as large as 60 to 100. You never knew. Bands back then, little known fact, bands back then were a point of pride for your regiment. The Civil War was much a war of music as it was fighting over different causes. Every 100 yards in a major battle, you would have heard a different band playing. And most bands would be right with the command staff directing the battle, but you would have heard them if you were on the front lines. Which is the sad thing about Hollywood, that when they portray some sort of Civil War movie, you never get that kind of feeling with that. But that's what was going on. Some bands were terrible, some bands were spectacular. Okay? Now, the type of instruments that were going on back then, any Civil War musician would have been comfortable with what we are playing. We have what they call period-appropriate instruments. These are not antiques.
Well, yes, they are antiques.
Well, maybe the player's an antique.
Working towards, buddy.
There were three basic types of ensembles during the Civil War. You had what they called the ancient tradition, which were signaling instruments. Every company of 100 men had either 2 bugles, 2 drummers, or 2 fifes. And when the regiment of 10 companies got together, that's where you got the phrase a corps, a bugle corps, or a drum corps, or fife corps in front of you, because they'd all put them together and march out. So we had the ancient tradition. You had the modern day concert band tradition, which the Marines were instrumental in starting. And what you had were clarinets, trombones, bassoons, those type of instruments that could not take the abuse and dirt and wear and tear out on the battlefield. These bands were usually stationed at a permanent base or in a city. So that was your modern day concert. The last, what we're portraying, is a European brass band tradition. And there were basically 5 different instruments, and we have 3 of them here, but give you an idea of what we're going with. They had, playing the lead voices, we had cornets. Now, cornets came in 2 sizes. These are the larger sizes, the B flat, but they also had a little smaller one, an E flat. And that is definitely a European thing. We also have a tenor horn, what we know today as a baritone. There was a smaller version of the tenor horn called an alto horn, played a little bit the range between the cornet and the tenor horn. And then the monster I'm playing that everybody understands is a tuba, but this tuba is not like the school tubas that are in double B flat or double C, the low ones. This one's a little higher and smaller, and this is an E flat tuba. So these are all period appropriate, although these horns are old in their own right. This one is built in 1904, yours was 1907. That's the modern one. The baritone's 1923. Then behind the brasses, we had rope drums. And these are all tension down with rope. There's no metal on these. And so you are hearing the real sound of what was going on back then. Okay? What's up?
Page 4.
Page 4, which is
Deck the Hall.
Deck the Hall. That's cool. How many verses? 3 verses.
People like the la la la. Oh, you want to explain the addition?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Deck the Halls may throw you because Deck the Halls is in the original arrangement. Now, this was written in 1862. All right? In the one that we're used to, yeah, da 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 da. Oh, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Oh, the da 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 da. You're not going to hear a lot of
I'm
that.
not saying
Just wait, buddy. So, you may want to listen to this once or twice before you chime in, because it's not the original, but it is in its original form, but not what we're used to. So let's do Deck the Halls.
The fa la la's are wrong.
Are we on the
Right.
Are we on the
3 times?
three time? Are we on the full bar pickup?
Yeah, 4 bar pickup.
Into 1, 2, 1, 2. Told you it was different. Now, a lot of times during the truces, bands would talk to each other, and strange as this sounds, they'll go, you know, we heard you across the battlefield playing. What was the name of that one song? And, well, how did it go? And they would sing it, unlike I can do it. And, now, oh, that was this and this. Well, can we have a copy of it? Sure. So the other band would pull out their music, and the band that's asking for it would sit down and write it out during the truce, so they would have it in their library. That was going on. Okay. Another thing that might be interesting to you is of a lot of the songs that we take for granted as, say, a Union song or a Confederate song, a lot of times were on both sides. The only thing that changed were the lyrics. Okay? And yes, some very insulting to one side or the other, but that's what was going on. We got
Page 8.
page 8, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. Now, I believe that one is in the modern forms. Up to you.
Yes, 3 bars and 2 beats.
First two? First two, all right.
First two.
2 bars before the first beat, 2 plus 2 beats.
All right, pick up. Is it? Nice, all right. 1, 2, 1, 2. gonna do, which the band hates. And
Don't be talking so much.
I love this stuff.
This is a band concert. Yeah, the heckling part, that's the part.
Gentleman right here, when we first started, asked me, he says, where was Camp Carlton? Well, background on the name and what we are doing the impression of. Camp Carlton was the largest military base here in the area during the Civil War. And if you know where the San Bernardino Municipal Golf Course is, that's Camp Carlton. So, now it stayed there for about a couple of years, and then there was a big flood, and then they said they moved it toward the Air Force Base, which is gone now, but there was a higher ground that they ran to. And then another flood came through, and they actually took it toward LA. So Camp Carlton jumped around. It's named after a general who was an Indian fighter. Part of this unit actually was absorbed into what they called the 2nd Regiment, or the California Column. And they went to Maryland to fight under that. And they went through Arizona, they went through New Mexico, they were chasing out the Confederates, and they were fighting Apaches. So all of this was going on in the 1860s. By 1866, 67, the entire regiment had been disbanded and sent home.
And that's enough for now. My grandson is getting.
Okay. That's just a rough house. What's our next one?
Carolyn.
Here we come with Carolyn. 15?
13.
13. Wassail song.
1, 2, 7, and 8.
1, 2, 7, and 8.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Two weeks before the first Really? I thought that's what you were going to do last time.
1, 2. Okay. Now, before I get into something, does anybody have a question about what's going on?
Oh, I snuck it in.
Yes, ma'am.
What is wassail? I think a lot of
Wassail?
What is wassail?
It's a boozy punch.
Yeah.
Punches of the day were what? 5 ingredients. Punch had 5, and the grog had 3 or something like that when you get into the old recipes, but they had booze, at least 2 kinds. Had to be warm on a cold winter's night.
Yes, ma'am.
They had any ever been profession history
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Bass drum would have been in there, percussionist? Cool. Tambourines, finger cymbals. They actually had some small cymbals that they were using too.
I was thinking of Merrill.
Yes, sir.
Why the Richmond Howitzers? I thought they were on the other side.
They are.
I think it's a return.
This group also does a lot of Civil War reenactment throughout the Southern California and over into Arizona.
We cross-dress.
We're cross-dressers. And so,
Turncoats.
you heard it here first. So when we're in our Confederate shtick, we are the band of the Richmond Howitzers. And we have gray uniforms and the whole bit, and we do a Confederate impression. And just between you and me, when you're in one of those reenactments, it's more fun to be on the Confederate side. Those guys are just a lot more fun. The North is always so well, we have a good time with that. Good. Okay, I hope I answered that one. Yes?
Was harmonica a common instrument? So
It was back and around that time, and you also had the jaw harp going on, and one of these days we have a band that does that, and they were using the old jug band. Oh yeah, and they're using penny whistles and violins and all kinds of things, and the common troops would have had those kind of instruments. This is a little more formal ensemble than that. But yeah, that was all going on. And a lot of singing.
Singing.
Christmas tree.
Singing.
Oh, Christmas tree.
Yes?
Would you play some of the things we're not familiar with?
Okay.
We can do that.
We're going to do
Let's
Lincoln.
change it up.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to do Lincoln's
Lincoln's favorite,
favorite
yeah.
Christmas hymn. Can anybody guess? Nobody have an idea?
previously,
Oh, cherry.
No? Called the Cherry Tree Carol. It's actually a pretty little hymn, or carol.
Let's just do 3 verses, but no introduction.
All right, 3 verses. We're going to start right into it.
Okay.
3. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's a good call. Anyone else have a question for me? Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's possible, but can we make like a Confederate request? Maybe hear like some Anna Lee again at the end of the show, or I'd like to hear that one.
What?
I don't want to sell you trader, but.
I'm playing that stinking Johnny Reb stuff.
Oh, come on.
Sure we will.
Don't even-
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah,
even be asked.
No, we got both troops here. We got the Confederate and the Union, or Confederate Union side. I can do that. How about Lincoln's favorite? Oh, yeah. And if you know it, sing along. We'll figure it out here real quick.
Lincoln's favorite, okay, for him, yes.
We want to keep the Johnny Rebs happy.
What if the boss likes it? Yeah.
Number 4?
Is that the one that comes after? And this would go on the battlefield.
Yeah.
If there was no band for the opposition, you'd hear whatever band was playing, and from the other side in the trenches you'd hear, "Play one for us!" And this was going on.
All right, that one.
And this is Lincoln's favorite.
One time, two times.
Where are we?
You won't sing this unless you know the words. And 1, 2, 1, 2. The South Hill, right? Little known fact about Dixie is it was written in upstate New York. And if you look at the lyrics, the words of it, it talks about being down. It's not I am down. I'm being, want to be down now. So, and then when it was over with, Lincoln actually had a couple different Union bands play Dixie. Oh yeah, he loved it. Any other questions, real quick? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes. In the 1840s, the valve on the, that thing he's pressing down, these things, and when you press down and blow into it, it opens up more tubing, which lets us go into lower or higher pitches, depending. And in the 1840s, they had an explosion, and a couple different manufacturers invented the valve, which made the brasses chromatic. In other words, they could play the notes on the piano, all the black and white notes, within a certain range. So that was an explosion. Every town had a band, brass band. Oh yeah, I mean, that was a point of pride. So when they would come to enlist a regiment at a particular area, the band would go in. And there's one real famous one, the Boston Brass Band ended up being the regiment's band. And so when the regiment mustered out, the band went back to it. But oh yeah, that was, and the Confederacy had a military school of music back then too. So they were training their musicians. And for a while, the Confederacy could outplay the Union bands. There were they figured there were roughly 500 Union bands that they knew of. That's a lot of bands. On the Confederate side, there was about 100, just over 150. That's still a lot of bands. All right? Being that each band was roughly anywhere from 16 to 24, you're getting into the thousands with the musicians. Okay? And one of the first regulations to come out in 1862 was to get rid of the regimental band because it was too expensive for the government. But you could get around that loophole if the band was supported by the officers or the hometown. So if you could get a little grant here and there, you could keep your band, and a lot of bands did survive through the Civil War that should have been decommissioned. Disbanded, yes. Disbanded. Yes? Yes.
I'm gonna ask them first and then you can answer them. What happened to the band members after the war?
All right.
Okay, and number two, how come you guys don't use the instruments from that time in addition to what they?
Okay, good, fair questions. Like any field troop, when they were mustered out, they went home. So, just like anybody else, this was your particular military job. To use the antique instruments of the day, one, they're very hard to come by. Two, they're expensive. And unless the maker made a match set, so we could get one instrument from one maker of the same era and another instrument from somebody else, but they won't play in tune. A lot of the bands would buy their instruments from one maker, and it varied from year to year with the maker. So if I bought a series of horns in 1861, that doesn't mean the replacement horn I got in 1863 is going to play with the ones in 1861.
Is that still true today?
No. There's a lot of different standards and things to keep that consistent. But that's what was going on back then. Yes?
Now, were the musicians all infantrymen, or what were the different, did they have different ranks, or?
Okay. Depending on what regiment you're in. We're trimmed in yellow, so we would have been part of the cavalry group. If it was light blue, you'd be infantry. If it was red, we'd be artillery. Green, we could have been assigned to the hospital. If we were all green, trimmed in black, we would have been a part of the sharpshooters battalion. So there's that.
And if we were actually musicians, we'd probably be dead.
Bands were captured. They were forced to play for the other side. Some bands stayed on the other side. They got better treatment.
But the point is.
That's why we have two uniforms.
Bandsman versus musician names. That's the point. The musician is the signal corps.
Oh, yeah.
This is bandsman.
Yeah, the military has a funny way. If you're a bugler, you're considered a field musician. If you're playing in an ensemble like this, you're a bandsman. And that's how that goes. Did I answer your questions?
Rank. She also asked about rank.
Oh, rank. If you notice, I'm not wearing rank, but I have on the belt, I have a, hello? I have a senior NCO sash on. Most bands did not wear rank, and that tradition still carried on today with the Marine Corps. If you look at their Washington, D.C. groups, the only one that has rank on is the drum major. Everybody else has no rank showing. That was trying to keep the uniform very clean looking. They would wear more braids and different lanyards and things like that. A musician would start in pay grade between a private and a corporal. And within different regiments, they could progress, like musician 3rd class, 2nd class, 1st class, they get more money. And that's how that, but as far as rank, they usually did not address with that. Did I answer that? Yes, ma'am.
Can we hear the other favorite song by Julia House?
Oh, yes, we can.
And then also, when the band worked, the band or was it always as their band?
There are a couple isolated situations where the lines were being overrun and bands actually dropped instruments, grabbed rifles or manned artillery pieces and saved the day. And that has gone all the way through history into the present day. That kind of thing still goes on. They want to battle him.
Yeah, and my grandson's 40 again.
Did I answer that? Okay. Anybody else before we play the next one? No. Battle Hymn of the Republic.
12.
Yeah.
There it is.
One, two. And one, two, and.
Second to last.
We're going to go right into a Spanish carol, which would have been used in this area. This actually came out of the Renaissance time. In the 50s.
I agree, that's his idea.
Critics, everywhere you go. This was actually written back in the Renaissance times called Foom, Foom, Foom.
For page 7.
And 7, and we'll do 2 verses.
Jump right in. Yeah.
Sure.
I know it.
Too fast. Now, I would probably get beat up if I didn't mention this. If you notice, we have a lady in the group. All right? So would you stand up and think about There is a great book out if you're interested about this. It's called They Fought Like Demons. And there's about 500 different accounts that they know of women in the battlefield and playing in different groups and things like this. There's a great quick little story where there was a husband and wife team. The husband was a regimental commander, infantry group, and he was killed on the battlefield. And all the men admired and respected the wife and basically told the generals above, unless she's put in command, we're not going to go back out on the battlefield. And they said, no, that ain't going to happen. They all started to desert. Well, they changed their mind. She led these guys into battle. Fascinating book. Ever get a chance to see it? It's called They Fought Like Demons.
Joy to the world.
Joy to the world. How many pages? 18. Huh? All 4 verses. One, two, one. introduce the members of the ensemble and give you a little of their background. Next to me, doing all the heavy lifting, lives here in Redlands, and he's an elementary music teacher and works in San Bernardino. Mark Sapleski. Next to him, also on one of the cornet parts, and she is a retired insurance, got it right this time, right? Retired insurance agent, lives here in Redlands also, and is very involved in a lot of different civic groups in town. This is Sylvia Becker. We affectionately refer to Sylvia as our den mother.
When they're being nice.
Over on the far end, playing the tenor horn, he is the manager of a electronics warehouse in Riverside and lives in San Bernardino. This is Mr. Michael Poor. Now I'm going to take 1 second and brag about our little drummer boy. If you know of the Allen family, especially Curtis Allen Sr., who started the 4th of July band, you're staring at his grandson. And his father, Curtis Allen Jr., has also taken over the 4th of July band. Hi, Curtis! Here's the neat thing. This is Jacob, and Jacob has just completed and been accepted. He took an audition with the Marine Corps, and in the fall, after he graduates from high school, he's going to go in and become a Marine musician on tuba. It'll be a big loss for us, and we are very, very proud of Jacob. He can, he knows he's playing percussion, but he's very good on tuba and baritone. He does bass guitar and string bass, and he definitely has his family's genes when it comes to the music end. We are very happy to have him with us. We are going to do, we doing that one?
That's what you said.
Did I? We're going to play a song that in its original state, you're going to go, this isn't right, but this is what it started with. It was written in the early 1860s. It's called Up on the Housetop. Do you have a number?
No, it's 1. 1, 2, and
Page 33.
33, page 33. We're going to do 1, 2, and 6.
or you can say 3, or you can say 5. We're only going to do 1.
Decision maker.
All right, here we go. Right up.
Yeah.
1, 2. What would be a Christmas time without jingle bells? Right? All right. In your book, it's called One Horse Open Sleigh. But I've got to give you a little warning about this thing here. It was written in 1857, And we are playing the original arrangement of this. The one-horse open sleigh while dashing through the snow part, oh, you'll recognize that. That's pretty simple, easy. When we get to the jingle bells, your ears might go a little funny, but this is the original Jingle Bells or one-horse open sleigh. How many? 2 verses.
What's the page?
28.
28. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's right. You want to explain that one? I don't know as well as you do. The boss has made a request, and it's called I Heard the Bells on Christmas. Oh, yeah. That actually came from the war. You know the story?
The dad was heartbroken because his son wounded or killed or.
Page 15.
Page 15.
No, I don't know. In other words, no, I don't know the story.
Yeah.
I'll have to learn the story on this one, but this was actually written during the war from an incident off of a battlefield. Very famous.
Oh,
Yeah.
How about 1, 4, 6, and 7?
1, 4, 6, and 7 is the verse. Yep.
intro,
2 bars or 1 bar?
bar before the first ending.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. getting down to our allotment time here. But I think a real nice one to close with will be Silent Night. Yeah, we'll do all three. This was written in 1818, page 30.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks again to the great Camp Carlton Band for coming out and making our holiday season even more festive, bringing history forward. Thank all of you for coming. Please mark your calendars for Saturday, February 10th, which will be our annual Lincoln Shrine Open House. We'll have the first Pennsylvania Light Artillery firing off a cannon in the park. We'll have live music, new exhibits. It'll be a great day of excitement. And of course, the annual Lincoln Dinner will be on Monday, February 12th. So watch out for announcements about those. We wish you and yours the best of holiday seasons and a happy new year. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2018.